Well, that's what I call a good time, New York Jets fans. Gangrene with a blowout win over the New England Patriots 24-3 at MetLife, at home, on short rest. Couldn't have asked for much more. Jets fans have every right, every reason to be thrilled about what transpired tonight. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. How fantastic was that? I felt like I was living in an alternate universe. I know the Jets beat the Pats week 17, 18 last year. Who cares? Okay, yeah, Belichick's last game. I don't care. It was a game nobody cared about. Win didn't matter. Lost. All it was going to be impacted was draft position and whether or not Belichick lost his last game, which again, that dude forgot about that before he was done walking off the field. People who think he's going to be traumatized by that, no. But tonight was what it was all about because tonight, early in the year, the Pats have looked better than anybody expected, beating Cincy week one, playing tough late week two. And the Jets just came out. They did some things that were uncharacteristic. They changed some things up. Give this coaching staff some credit. We saw more blitzing from Jeff Ulbrich. We saw the up tempo stuff early on. Let's cover that. Let's talk about how this whole thing unfolded. Jets come out basically um, up tempo, and Aaron Rodgers talked about it during the week, saying we got to get faster starts. We got to get rolling early. Unfortunately, they got rolling early. They threw earlier. They threw on first down. They were marching down the field, and then of course a penalty because this is what they do. Jets get flagged, first and 10, I believe, or second and 10 becomes second and 20. Then they run it up the middle for a couple yards, and that becomes third and 17. And then they punt it and they don't score on that opening drive. They come out on the next drive. Alan Lazard rejuvenated. Look, and I know it was a little bit early, but I said after just a few days of training camp, I wrote an article saying, "Do we have the rejuvenated Lazard?" He was terrible last year. I mean, anyone had to know he wasn't that bad. Like that, that was his worst year, but or at least worse than he'd been in a few years. So you knew that he wasn't going to be that bad this year, but it was a matter of how much better is he going to be. He's been fantastic. Of course, he dropped his first damn target of the year. He had to do that. Since then, he's been fine. Made some big plays tonight. Scores the touchdown to get the Jets on the board first. Uh, and yeah, that's my QB. MWK Direct says, listen, this is what I mean by I felt like I was in an alternate universe. I know they won last week, but this was like the fact it was home, the fact it was the Pats, who again I know the Jets were favorite, but a lot of people, myself included, I thought this game would be closer. But I've seen a lot of people predicting upsets, and I've seen a lot of people, oh, this is going to be a 4-point game, a 3-point game. Give me New England and the points. Their defense is a lot better than people are giving them credit for. Um, and this team, as one of my friends messaged me, and I'm thinking the same thing. They left points on the board. They had a missed field goal. They had the penalties that pulled them out of field goal range and ended drives earlier than it should have been. They cleaned things up a little bit, and this is a 31 to 3 game. It was masterful game by Aaron Rodgers. 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. As I said during the game, Aaron Rodgers threw his 5th touchdown of the year in the 3rd quarter of week 3. Last year, the Jets starting quarterback threw his 5th touchdown of the year in week 7. So, I mean, listen, it's no big secret that the Jets have a slight upgrade at quarterback this year. But what a masterful performance by Aaron Rodgers. Most important thing to me coming out of this game, and I said it early on, I was texting back and forth with Dylan and Chris and said, listen, guys, this, because, you've heard me on this show. I said after week 1, after watching the All 22, I was like, I'm a little bit worried with how gimpy Aaron Rodgers is. Not like, oh my God, the sky is falling. But this is something that bears watching because if this doesn't get better in the coming weeks, by week 5, 6, 7, if he's still limping around, I don't see him being a guy like you can't have a gimpy quarterback get you through a long playoff run against quality teams. Tonight, no sign of a limp. It was the smoothest we've seen him move. He picked up, he had a couple of runs for first downs. Um, he didn't look like the Aaron Rodgers of his youth, but he absolutely could He absolutely could have made some plays. Let's see, what do we got? Thank God we drafted Fashanu over Bowers. I'm not going to have that debate. Brock Bowers right now leading all NFL tight ends in catches, yards, and catch percentage. He's got 15 catches on 16 targets. Because again, it's my whole point with the draft was that yeah, Fashanu is good, but it's not like he was the only tackle. There were other guys. There was Roger Rosengarten. There were free agents. There were other guys out there. So I'm watching Conklin tonight, and somebody who knew how I felt about Bowers messaged me. Yeah, O line's important, but this is what I'm saying. There were other O linemen out there. Fashanu wasn't the only option in the entire NFL. There were free agents. There were other draft choices. And Bowers, as I said, number one tight end in the NFL through the first couple weeks. Anyway, moving on from that, we're not going over Bowers. The reason why someone interjected that, though, thanks for bringing that up. Morgan Moses left the game with a knee injury, which meant Olu Fashanu got to come in and make his debut. Looked solid, as expected. Look, even as someone who preferred Bowers, Fashanu's a stud. It's one of those things where I'm not. It's not that I don't think he's a good player. I just preferred the playmaker. Similar to Will McDonald, who, by the way, Will McDonald, a couple more sacks tonight, 3 last week, 2.5 this week, 5.5 sacks over the last 2 weeks. I said last year that the right pick in that spot was JSN. And the Jets went with Will McDonald. And people, stop hating on McDonald. And I said a million times, I think Will McDonald is going to be a very good player. But for what that team was built to do last year, had Rodgers been healthy, you wanted JSN. But again, getting back to tonight, Rodgers' mobility was fantastic compared to where it was just a couple of weeks ago. Not even a couple of weeks ago, 11, 12 days ago in San Francisco. Very encouraging sign because, as I said, I mentioned it on the air, talked to Chris and Dylan off air and, shot them some clips I found on the All-22s. And I'm like, guys, I'm not loving that he's gimpy. I'm not loving that he doesn't look 100% comfortable or able to run on that foot. And now he was able to. So that was absolutely fantastic. The defense as a whole, I mentioned Will McDonald with 2.5 sacks. As a whole, defense had 7 sacks. Solomon Thomas had a half a sack and also made an appearance on offense. We saw him early on as a fullback on goal line, and then they used him as a blocker in motion going right to left across the formation as a blocker on the Brees Hall TD run from was the 1 or 2 yard line from inside the 5. So really nice job there. Just nice job all around. 7 sacks again for the defense. I'm going to pull up the numbers right here and see exactly who had what. Chuck Clark had one on a blitz. Chuck Clark also had a forced fumble that he ripped away from Ramondre Stevenson, I believe, and took that away. Quinnen Williams had a sack. Will McDonald. This has him down for 2. I thought he had 2.5. Maybe it was 2. Tack McKinley had a half a sack. Solomon Thomas had a half a sack. Javon Kinlaw had a sack. Leonard Taylor, the rookie UDFA, had a half a sack. Michael Clemens had a half a sack. The Clemens one he shared with McDonald. And I'll tell you what, McDonald, Clemens, and Quinnen Williams, all 3 of those guys got it. In fact, watching it, I thought that was a Quinnen sack. He looked like he was there first. And funny enough, he was the only one who wasn't given credit. So we'll see what happens there. Sometimes, official scorers will adjust that stuff. So again, we talked about Ulbricht blitzing, Braylon Allen, Brees Hall, neither one of them with a, monster game statistically in terms of total yards. However, Braylon Allen, 5 yards a carry, 11 for 55. Brees only 3.4 a carry at 16 for 54, but he did have the touchdown. Aaron Rodgers, and Brees also 4 catches for 29, excuse me. One of the great things about tonight that we didn't see in week 1, saw a little bit more in week 2, but the way the ball was spread around. You had Tyler Conklin, 5 for 93. Alan Lazard, 3 for 48 and a touchdown. Mike Williams, 3 for 34. Garrett Wilson, 5 for 33 and a touchdown. Brees, 4 for 29. Xavier Gibson, 2 for 16. Ruckert, 2 for 15. And Braylon Allen, 3 for 13. So that's 8, 9 different receivers that Aaron Rodgers delivered the ball to. And he looked smooth. He looked comfortable. Like I said, the mobility was good. There were a few things, and Rodgers commented after the game. He said, when me and Garrett Wilson get on the same page, it's going to be special because it did look like, there were several plays where they weren't on the same page. whether it was where the Rodgers was throwing early or overthrowing Garrett. Like those two aren't there yet. But I don't know if you saw it on Twitter. Former Packers quarterback Kurt Benkert was on there and said, he made a similar comment. Like Wilson and Rodgers are close. Like they're almost there. And once those two click, and this is kind of, these aren't his words, this is me saying, once those two click and you have everyone else involved in the offense, this is why this year was exciting. However, listen, enjoy the win. The Jets have had enough blowouts at the hands of the Patriots over the years, that we should absolutely be taking this in, enjoying the hell out of it. And the Jets did what they were supposed to do. I think from Ulbricht's perspective, we probably saw all that blitzing because they said, look, we want this win. They got Caden Wallace, who was a right tackle at Penn State, mid-round pick, starting at left tackle. Basically, New England was banged up on the O-line, starting 2 or 3 guys either out of position or off the bench. So let's be aggressive. Let's take advantage of that. The Jets did it early on. I believe it was Jamie and Sherwood blitzed early on and got a pressure on a 3rd down. And you're like, okay, that's a little bit uncharacteristic for this team. And then we saw it several times through the day. So nice job by Ulbricht getting his team ready, taking advantage of the other team's weakness, and exploiting that, getting his defense to get after it. I mentioned the Morgan Moses injury. They said there will be an MRI. Left knee injury was all that they said on the broadcast. Nothing from Salah on that. Another thing that broadcast pointed out, I think every Jets fan should have appreciated if you caught it. John Simpson coming over to Aaron Rodgers' defense when he was hit late. Well, not hit late. He was still in bounds. It wasn't a dirty play. So no, I'm getting 2 different plays mixed up now. I apologize. Simpson came over when a Patriots defender picked up, I believe it was Garrett Wilson or Brees, picked him up and slammed him to the turf after a play. John Simpson came over. Then Jets offensive players came over later in the game to come to Aaron Rodgers, defense when somebody hit him. Again, still in bounds, but a little bit low and right as he was about to go out. However, what I liked about that also is that you could see that it was, I believe it was the Georgia Tech kid. He kind of fist bumped Rodgers, kind of a quick apology. I think he realized he hit him low. And so Rodgers, when he saw his guys coming over to get in his face, was pulling them away, saying, no, we're good. We dapped it up. He apologized. I love that stuff. I love it. Be competitive, be fiery. If you do something that's a little out of line, don't hesitate to say, hey, man, my bad. And so that's what happened there. But again, seeing John Simpson come over, like I said, I'm sure it was Brees. I think I said Garrett initially. Came over in Brees' defense, got in his face. They pointed it out on the broadcast. I mean, you see it right away if you're watching the game. But the broadcast talked about how the Jets, you've seen a little bit more attitude from this offensive line. And this is a good group, man. This is a really good group. Look, it took years between the AVT injuries, the Becton injury. Another guy people forget about, not exactly a world beater, but as Joe Douglas was trying to piecemeal, trying to put this offensive line together, he goes out, he traded for Alex Lewis, who wasn't great, but he was an upgrade. He was, a below average starter, but he wasn't the disaster that the guys that preceded him were. And he had his issues, whatever they were, that forced him to, leave for the year and then sort of retire and come. I can't even remember if he came back briefly, but all these moves that were, again, you had the AVT injury, you had the Alex Lewis thing, you had the Becton thing. You drafted Cam Clark with an eye, hoping he could become a starter. He breaks his neck. It was just like one bad break after another with this offensive line between injuries. I mean, really, it was injuries were the main thing. And now, again, Moses is dinged up, but that's why you drafted Fashanu. And like I said, I like Fashanu. I get the logic behind it, but me personally, again, doesn't matter now. I would have gone a different direction and added a tackle elsewhere. But as it stands, they got themselves a young stud tackle, which I really like. Salah said after the game, interesting thing, he really seems to be working to downplay the Will McDonald production. And again, Will McDonald, I felt like Will McDonald, what we've seen the last couple of weeks, he goes on streaks. You saw it at the end of last week. I pointed out right after the game that he had that sack and then he was held on the following play. And if you go back and watch that whole drive, that was like a really good series for him. He beat the tackle 3 in a row. And then tonight he had a tackle. And so I keyed on him on the next play. And it looked to me, I have to see the replay in the all 22 or whatever, but it looked to me like he was held pretty badly on the following play or again soon thereafter. So it's like he gets twitched up and he gets in his zone. And like, it reminds me of, I remember being at a Jets Dolphins game years ago, sitting in these terrible seats in the upper deck, but watching John Abraham. And he was so twitched up. He got the Dolphins tackle to jump like 2 or 3 times on one drive because he was beating this dude so badly. It was like Abraham was just in this zone where his timing was perfect and he was firing off the ball. He had that explosive first step and he could get the edge and he just got beating this tackle. And then the guy just starts jumping on every play because he's trying to get that half step to get the beat on Abraham. And I'm thinking we're starting to see a little of that with Will McDonald, that John Abraham twitchiness. That's gonna, when he gets locked in and he gets in his zone, you're gonna see guys starting to either hold or jump or whatever because they're gonna have to find a way to deal with him. Let's hop in the chat real quick. Mike says, love Mosley, but I'm assuming he means tap out now. Surratt, Williams, and Sherwood are an upgrade. Listen, I can't say I disagree. I thought last week the defense looked faster, and it was. Jamie and Sherwood is a younger, faster player than CJ Mosley. I get that CJ Mosley is a leader. I get that he's the captain. I get that he's seen it all. You want him on the field. You want his brains. But they did okay today without him. I think that I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if he were ushered out. I don't expect it to happen. Salah's loyal to his vets. I think as long as Mosley is okay, they'll take the downgrade at the position. Physically, they'll get a little bit slower, a little worse in coverage. Now, will it stay that way if teams exploit it? We'll have to wait and see. But I did think through the first couple weeks, Mosley looked a little slower. Was it the toe? Has that been a lingering thing? We'll have to see about that. Alon says, curious to see if he'll have the guts to tell him that we're going to limit his snaps. I didn't even, before seeing your question, Alon, that's what I was saying. I don't know that Salah will. We'll find out in time. Let's see. Mike says you don't like, Warren was inactive. They haven't been activating. Max Mitchell and Carter Warren have been inactive every week. So they worked Olu at left and right in the preseason, and they clearly view him as the backup at both spots. Nice to see competent quarterback play. I'll tell you what, Jerome, not just competent, but high level. But I get what you're saying. Even just converting on a 3rd and 6, which shouldn't be the most incredible thing in the world. But when you've dealt with years of this Jets quarterback play, you see a 3rd and 6 and you're like, oh my God, just completed a pass for 8 yards on 3rd and 6. For the past 10 years, that's a 4-yard pass. Like, they have a quarterback who completes passes to guys beyond the first down marker on 3rd down. It's amazing. Yeah, competent is even an amazing upgrade, but the Jets are a step above that. Some of the throws that we saw Rodgers make, the ball down the sideline to Mike Williams, a great touch on it, good spot. So yeah, it's been an absolute treat. And yeah, Mike and Alon saying it's Robert Saleh's job to be able to speak to Mosley and say, hey, we're gonna work Sherwood in a little bit more. And I don't, again, if it's going to come down to how Mosley plays. If they can win with Mosley, I think they stick with him. If Mosley is not playing well enough to the point where it's potentially costing them football games, Salah won't have a choice. But salary aside, captaincy aside, this year is about saving jobs, and that's where you wonder, will Salah? I think in the past he wouldn't have, but he's got to know his job's on the line, and if he can see that Mosley is not playing as well as Sherwood, he's got to be like, hey man, nothing personal, but I'm trying not to get fired. I got got a big family to feed, and I want to keep my job. So that could sort of drive that a little bit. Let's see. Beloved piece. The best part of the game is that the offense hasn't touched its peak yet. And this is what I was saying earlier, right? When Rodgers said after the game, he's not 100% there with Garrett Wilson yet. And I agree with him, because if Rodgers was completely on and Garrett was on, he'd be putting up much bigger numbers. Now, right now, he's getting targets, but not catches. But I would expect that to change as the season rolls on. And once it does, once even the O-line, they're fine. But, you know, we've talked about how they didn't play as a unit in a game during the preseason. So I'd said, like, how many full games account for a preseason? And I guess if you look at snap counts when guys used to play, excuse me, terrible cough. Everyone in my house is sick right now. Um, when they used to play in the preseason, you probably get a game and a half, 2.5 games maybe worth of snaps. Well, now you got 3 games under your belt. Like now you should be not perfect, but you should be far enough along that there's no more excuses about, oh, we haven't played side by side. And again, that's not to say that they should be firing on all cylinders and running smoothly after 3 games. There will still be hiccups. It takes a while to build familiarity and continuity and all that stuff. But that'll come. And they're further along now than they were. AVT week 1. Some of the reps he had, it was like, woo. But then you remember, like, all right, he missed a lot of time and he's not played with this group. And he's still, in a way, kind of new to the offense because he only played a handful of games in it last year. But I thought week 2, he was much better. And I saw no issues with him tonight. So just a really good job up front. The secondary did a nice job. Again, listen, Pats don't have a lot to work with at receiver. Jacoby Brissett, nice enough veteran who fill in, win you a couple games every now and then. But they didn't exactly stop the greatest show on turf today. But listen, you held them out of the end zone. And this is a team that again has played well the first couple weeks. And a lot of people, I don't think I heard anybody say this was going to be a Jets blowout win. Every analyst I heard, close game, close game. Give me the Pats and the points. I think the Jets are 5.5, 6-point favorite. I think I said 27-10, I think was my prediction. I could be wrong about that. I was somewhere in that ballpark, though. Maybe even said 24-17 that they do. Whatever it was. Doesn't matter. Jets managed to win it. Hope Jets fans don't think we shouldn't sign Reddick because we beat up on a junior high school O-line tonight. It's a good point, Elon. The thing is, the fact that the Jets didn't reach out at all. Rich Samini made a good point earlier, saying that if you're going to approach Reddick, like, this is the time to do it. You've got the bye week, not bye week, the mini bye. You've got 10 days. You're not playing this weekend. The guy has cost himself, I think he's coming up on $7 million now total in fines. You're not, if you lost this game and didn't get to the quarterback, Reddick might have you. But as it stands, they're getting to the quarterback. Again, 7 sacks tonight, 2 for McDonald, 2.5. But imagine with the way this D-line is getting after the quarterback after sluggish performance in week 1. Get Reddick out there on that edge, team him up with Will McDonald, the way McDonald's playing. And look, I don't think Will McDonald's going to get 2 sacks a week. I'd like him to, but let's be honest, that's not going to happen, especially as, once you start playing better teams. Let's not lose sight of the fact, and this is what Elon just said, and I briefly mentioned it earlier. This is against a very banged up, very inexperienced line. Caden Wallace, as I mentioned, guy who played opposite Olu Fashanu in college, right? So he was on the right side. He'd played 29 snaps this year. So you basically have an inexperienced rookie playing out of position on arguably the most important position on the offensive line. And yeah, he got beaten up. He had some flags, he gave up some sacks. So you can't really look at this and go, oh, well, the Jets this is just what the Jets are going to do now. They're going to have weeks where the pass rush won't be there. And that's where those are the weeks when you're going to think, damn it, get Reddick in here. But we'll see what happens if the Jets sort of approach him and go aggressively. Do we think the Jets could go 9-1 if they play like this and stay healthy? I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I will say, excuse me, I will say I did pick them to win 13 games. Now, I'm not going to back off of that because I said it and I'll stick with it. But as I said yesterday, I'm not quite as bullish. Well, you know what? Let's see what happens when Lecky Fotu gets back. I think he's a big piece of this team being able to stop the run. But I think the interior D-line depth, I probably overrated that a little bit. But part of that was with Fotu on the line, who I didn't think was going to be all-world player. But I think in terms of stopping the run, that's something he can really help with. So, but could they get to 9-1? Listen, absolutely. I mean, Even though like teams like the Vikings, the Steelers are playing a little better than than people expected. Um, Justin Fields, with Pittsburgh, it's like he's not throwing the ball really, but he's such a threat with his legs that he's making plays, and that defense is good enough that they can keep you out of the end zone. Um, but listen, if Rodgers keeps doing tonight or keeps doing the season what he did tonight, and we see Aaron Rodgers sort of exploiting, not even exploiting, but just using eight of his guys, hitting seven, eight, nine different receivers, that's going to be tough to defend. It really is, and who knows at what point do they get Malachi Corley comfortable enough that he can get involved and get on the field a little bit? We saw Isaiah Davis today. A couple carries, couple yards, nothing big, but good to see another rookie getting on the field. Um, Brandon Rodgers stat line: 24 points, 0 hugs. Yeah, 0 hugs indeed. That was weird. For those of you who missed it, um, Rodgers came off after a score. Salah came over to give him a hug, and Rodgers was like up, like pushed him away, like he was, what is it? I don't know, I can't think of the word, but yeah, he was, and it wasn't just that he didn't want him hugging him. And I'm not trying to make something out of nothing. I don't know what was said. Rodgers did not look happy at all. Like he wasn't looking at Robert Saleh like, no, man, no. It was like a death stare. And Saleh was asked about it after the game, and he kind of laughed and said, "Oh yeah, we talked during the week about getting the defense a 2-score lead, and he did it, and da da da." It's like, yeah, but that doesn't explain why he looked at you like he was not one bit happy with Salah. Again, I don't want to make something out of nothing. It could have been, I was going back and forth with some friends during the game, and somebody made a good point. They said, maybe it's just Salah celebrating earlier than Rodgers would have liked. Maybe it's Rodgers going, "Hey man, game's not over yet. Let's focus here." And with Rodgers being as intense of a competitor as he is, you could see it being that. But we don't really know what was said there. Mike says Clemens playing sneaky good. Yeah, he is. He had a few times he gave up the edge, but all in all, he's holding his own as a quality player. Not a great player, but I don't think anyone expected him to be great. And let's see, beloved piece. Is it me or is it Ruckert? Is Ruckert very hot and cold in terms of his play? That's a good question. With Ruckert, he's got to start producing. And he get a couple catches tonight. It's nice. Step in the right direction. Um, Last week he had an easy touchdown that he cost himself by not finishing his route. There's not a Jets fan on the planet that isn't rooting like hell for Jeremy Ruckert to be a player. And when they've used him as a blocking fullback, at times as a blocking tight end, he has been an absolute monster. But you want to start seeing some production. Start throwing him the football. And tonight, 2 catches, 18, 20 yards, whatever it was. Whatever it was, you take it. It's something. Because with him, it's been a lot of nothing. So let's get the guy more involved. You can't have another season of 11 catches for 70 yards. At some point, listen, there are teams in the NFL who keep blocking tight ends, and if the Jets maybe they envision him as that and say that's what he's going to be, I think he can be more than that. I think he was expected to be more than that when he was drafted. So beloved piece, I would say with Ruckert, it's more cold and cold and cold with the occasional warming up. But we need to see more of that. We need to see more, more production from him. Let's see. If you were Douglas at the trading deadline, do you think you should go after Adams? Um, Thing is, I mean, of course you would love to add him, but the issue, you got a few issues there. You got the salary thing. Um, Oakland, or sorry, Las Vegas, unless they're completely out of it, I don't think they're trading him. If they're sitting there at 3-2 or 2-3, or I forget what week they've pushed the trade deadline back to. Even if they're around 500, which they very well could be, why would Las Vegas trade him? I mean, you've got to sell to your fans that you're trying to win. You got a new stadium, new city. You're going to trade a guy sitting there at like what? Let's say hypothetically you're 3-3, and you're going to give the guy up what? And then you missed the playoffs by a game or two. And you have to explain to your fans, yeah, we really wanted that third round pick. You're not getting a one. He's old, huge salary. And if you're willing to trade him, there's obviously a reason for it. It's not because you think he's got 7 good years left. So would I like to have the guy on the roster? Absolutely. I think really though that if Joe Douglas is going to make a deal, maybe it's because of the depth right now. Like I'd love to see a DT added, um, a DT, a safety, add a little bit of depth there. Ashton Davis was terrible. Um, Not so much tonight. I saw him tonight. I don't know how much defense he actually played, but he was benched last week. He was bad the week before that. So yeah, should he go after Adam? Sure, but why would Las Vegas trade him unless they're 1-6, 1-5? Which listen, I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe they will be, but I don't see that happening. They just came back and beat Baltimore on the road. I think Minshew's a decent QB. I think Adams, Bowers, Mayer, that gives them 3 really good targets. Again, Adams is Adams. Bowers, I mentioned earlier, leads all tight ends in catches and yards. Mayer is a good complement to Bowers. I think they have some weapons. They got some good running backs. I think Las Vegas can win some football games, so I don't see why they would deal the guy unless the wheels fall off. Let's see. Yeah, ask a month from now. Yeah, that's kind of I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, Dana. Let's see where the Raiders are before we talk about whether or not they'll make that deal. If I were GM, I'd go after Clowney from the Panthers. I don't know if this was you, beloved piece, but somebody else mentioned that to me the other day on Twitter. That might not be a bad idea. Honestly, Carolina's terrible. Just benched their quarterback. Clowney's an older guy, but he's a productive. Joking about trading Reddick to the Eagles for Bryce Huff, which I think every Eagles fan would be in favor of right now. But I hadn't really started thinking much about who would be available. But yeah, I mean, there might not be a worse team than the Panthers. And if you could bring Clowney in here and add him as an edge, that to me would be a no-brainer. So good call from you there, beloved piece. Let's see if we got any other notes on the game itself. Not defensively, not a ton of tackles for anybody because the Patriots couldn't get possession of the ball. This was similar to the Jets 49ers week 1. I was just about to say the Jets probably held the ball for 40 minutes. I've just pulled it up. 40 minutes and 4 seconds. Pats held the ball for 1956. 27 first downs to 12. I mean, the Jets just first down, first down, first down. Thing of beauty. So the Jets 27 first downs to 12. The Jets were 10 for 15 on third down. The Pats were 2 of 11. Pats 3 for 3 on fourth down. Not bad. Total plays. Jets 70, Pats 48. Pats allowed 7 sacks. Jets allowed 2. Jets punted 3 times. Pats 5. Let's see. Jets 8 penalties for 106 yards. I mean, at least one of them, I forget which one, was a garbage flag. But a lot of it was legit. 8 penalties for 106 yards. No interceptions thrown. The Patriots lost a fumble. Rushing yards, Jets had 133 to the Pats 78. Jets were 5.7 yards per play to the Pats 2.9. And the Jets had 400 yards to the Patriots. Oh, wow. I didn't realize how low that was. Patriots had 139 total yards to the Jets 400. I think I actually had seen that just as the game was wrapping up. I'd completely forgotten about how lopsided that was. Huge win, guys. Huge win, Jets fans. Enjoy it. It's been a long. I messed up after the game. I was so excited. I looked back and I completely forgot about, like I said, last year's exhibition game. But the Jets have beaten the Pats by double digits a couple times since 2002. I thought that was I scrolled through the history of the matchups, and the first one I saw was a 2002 game, and I thought, Jesus, they haven't beaten them by double digits in that long. They've actually done it 2 or 3 times in 22 years. So not exactly a common occurrence. And like I said, this one wasn't a week 17, week 18 exhibition game. This one mattered. Let's see. The hold on Conklin was a horrible call. I thought he had his hand dug in under the guy's shoulder pad as the running back was going by. Felt like he held him. I felt like it impacted the play. I don't think it was that horrible. And Mike says Clowney would be the perfect replacement for JJ. I'd be checking it on JFM as well. JFM, I think I may have half joked about that when I mentioned the Reddick thing. Um, may not have even said it, but in my mind, because I think he didn't have a really strong week 1, and I think he had a concussion week 2, so he might miss some time. But I thought, can you get them? Can you trade back? One thing about Huff, though, I will say this. Somebody tweeted this out yesterday. Again, Eagles fans very unhappy at the moment. One tweet from an Eagles fan said, of Bryce Huff's 10 sacks last year, and again, I didn't go back and see if this was true, but he claimed he went back and watched all 10 of his sacks. 6 of them came against backup offensive tackles. I didn't realize that, if true. And another one he said was like Tua fell down and Huff touched him. He was like, 6 sacks against backups and one where the guy fell down, and then he had 3 sacks against starters. But look, I'm not trying to take anything away from Bryce Huff. I just, if that's real, I did not realize that. I remember them playing some backups, but I didn't realize quite that many of his sacks came against those guys. So, but look, if Joe Douglas could call Denver and say, I'll give you a 6 for John Franklin Myers and get him back in the building, absolutely, I'd be all for it. Not so sure Denver would do it. You might, for the money they'd lose, you might have to offer them like a 5, which I'd still do that because he would be fantastic to bring back. That's going to wrap this one up. Big win for the Jets over the Pats at home. Oh, and how empty. I'm actually 3,475 miles from MetLife Stadium. And from my living room in England, I could feel the absence of Patriots fans in the building. The bandwagon empty. Just nothing but Jets fans. I just looking at the crowd, I was like, I think I saw one shot during the game of a very unhappy Patriots fan. That was absolutely phenomenal. The fact that to see the bandwagon fans go by the wayside, Jets fans in the building, packing the stuff out. That was absolutely phenomenal. So I'd be lying if I said that wasn't something I'd look forward to. I've been in that building enough times against Patriots, against the Pats, and sat among all the Patriots fans and thought, God, I can't wait till they turn this around and then all these bandwagon fans can go away. And for the time being, they have. If Drake May is good, the bandwagon will fill back up. But as of right now, those diehard fans that travel because they love the Patriots so much, nowhere to be seen. That'll wrap this one up. Have a good one, Jets fans. Enjoy the win. Extended week. Get to watch Sunday stress-free and rewatch the Jets win if you like. Whatever's going to get you in a good football mood. Have a good one, Jets fans.